It was a cold, rainy afternoon when life decided to test the limits of kindness. The streets glistened with puddles, traffic honked impatiently, and the world felt too busy to notice anyone suffering. But if you're watching this right now, I want you to imagine being in that moment, because what happened next would not only change one man's life but also melt the heart of a woman who thought she'd seen it all. And hey, before we dive into this unforgettable story, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because stories like this, they deserve to be told. Jason Miller was a delivery driver, not the fancy kind with a shiny uniform and a branded van, but the type who worked long hours just to make ends meet. He was a single dad raising his 7-year-old son, Liam, after losing his wife to cancer 2 years ago. Money was tight, the rent was overdue, but Jason's priority was simple: keep a roof over their heads and food on the table. That afternoon, he was making a routine delivery to a luxurious high-rise in the wealthiest part of town. When the elevator opened on the penthouse floor, Jason expected to hand over a package, get a quick signature, and leave. Instead, the door swung open to chaos. A young girl, maybe around 8, was curled on the marble floor, gasping for breath, her face pale and drenched in sweat. She was alone. Jason froze for half a second before instinct kicked in. "Hey, hey! Are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. Her weak voice trembled. I can't breathe." Jason looked around. No one. No nanny, no parent, just the echo of her shallow gasps. He knew asthma attacks, Liam had suffered from them before, and without help, this girl could die. "Where's your inhaler?" he asked urgently. She pointed toward a handbag on the couch. He found it, but it was empty. Panic raced through his veins, but Jason didn't waste another second. He scooped her up in his arms, not caring that his delivery schedule was ruined. The building's doorman shouted something about security, but Jason pushed through the glass doors into the storm. He ran into the street, calling for a cab, but none stopped. So, without thinking, he darted across traffic and flagged down a passing car. "Please, it's an emergency." Jason shouted to the driver, who reluctantly let them in. The ride to the hospital felt endless. Jason held the girl close, whispering, "Stay with me, kiddo. You're gonna be okay." When they burst into the ER, doctors rushed to take her. Jason stayed until they told him she was stable. He finally asked for her name, Sophie, and for her parents. A stern-looking woman in a business suit arrived minutes later, her eyes sharp but tired. She was Alexandra Hayes, CEO of one of the biggest tech companies in the country. She was Sophie's mother. At first, Alexandra's tone was defensive. "Who are you? Why were you with my daughter?" Jason calmly explained what happened. Alexandra's expression softened as she realized he had saved her little girl's life. For a woman used to people wanting something from her, it was almost shocking to meet someone who acted purely out of kindness. The next day, Alexandra called Jason. She wanted to thank him in person. She invited him and Liam to dinner at her home. It was awkward at first, her world of wealth and power seemed galaxies away from Jason's modest life. But then Sophie ran to hug Jason, calling him my hero, and the walls between them began to crumble. Over the weeks that followed, Alexandra found excuses to see Jason. Sometimes she'd invite him to events to thank him, other times she'd drop by his apartment with gifts for Liam. Slowly, conversations became longer, smiles lingered, and their lives intertwined. Jason learned that Alexandra's success came at a cost. She had lost her husband years ago and was raising Sophie alone, often feeling guilty for missing important moments in her daughter's life. One rainy evening, Alexandra showed up at Jason's door, not as a CEO but as a tired, worried mother. Sophie was sick again, not an emergency this time, but she didn't want to face the night alone. Jason brewed tea, made soup, and they sat together in his small living room while Liam and Sophie watched cartoons. Alexandra looked around at the warmth and love in the humble home and whispered, "You have something money can't buy." By spring, what started as gratitude had grown into something neither could ignore. Jason had shown her that love wasn't about grand gestures or wealth, it was about showing up, about care when no one's watching. And Alexandra gave Jason something he hadn't dared to hope for again: partnership, trust, and a future where his son had a bigger family. The story came full circle months later when they all walked hand in hand into that same hospital, not for an emergency, but for Sophie's final asthma checkup. The doctor declared her stronger than ever. Jason caught Alexandra's gaze and saw gratitude, love, and the quiet promise of forever. Sometimes, life puts the right people in your path in the most unexpected way. One act of kindness, one decision to care when no one else did, can change everything. And if you're still here with me, remember this: you never know whose life you might touch. So keep your heart open, your hands ready to help, and your hope alive. Because love can show up when you least expect it. Jason never thought much about fate. He believed in hard work, in keeping his head down, in doing what needed to be done for Liam. But after that night in the hospital, he couldn't shake the image of Sophie's small hand clutching his shirt, the way she'd looked at him like he was her only lifeline. Days turned into weeks, and Jason went back to his normal routine: early mornings, deliveries stacked high in the back of his old van, and evenings helping Liam with homework. But every time he drove past that luxurious part of town, he thought about Sophie. One evening, while Liam was coloring at the kitchen table, Jason's phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Miller? The voice was calm but elegant. This is Alexandra Hayes. I hope I'm not calling too late. Jason straightened in his chair. Oh, no, it's fine. How's Sophie? She's doing well. Better, thanks to you. There was a pause. I'd like to properly thank you. Dinner, tomorrow night? My treat. Jason hesitated. That's not necessary. Maybe not, she replied softly, but I'd still like to. The next evening, Jason ironed the one button-up shirt he owned. Liam teased him. Dad, you look like you're going to a wedding. It's just dinner, bud, Jason chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. When they arrived at Alexandra's penthouse, Jason noticed the change from that first chaotic day. The place was quieter, warmer. Sophie ran to greet him, her cheeks pink with health. You came, she beamed, hugging his legs. Dinner was awkward at first. Jason wasn't used to the polished silverware and art-covered walls. But Alexandra broke the tension with a smile. Sophie talks about you almost every day. She's convinced you're a superhero. Jason laughed. I think she's giving me too much credit. Maybe, Alexandra said, but I'm not. Over the next few months, their paths kept crossing. Sometimes intentionally, sometimes by chance. Alexandra would drop off a thank you basket. Jason would run into her at the grocery store when she was buying something for Sophie's school project. And slowly, friendship began to grow in the quiet moments. One night in late winter, Alexandra called again. Her voice trembled. Jason. Sophie's having trouble breathing again. It's not as bad as before, but I'm scared. I'm on my way, Jason said instantly. When he arrived, he found Alexandra pacing the living room while Sophie sat bundled in a blanket. Jason knelt beside her. Hey, kiddo, let's slow your breathing down together, okay? He showed her the same calming technique he used for Liam, and within minutes, the tension eased. Alexandra sank into the couch, her shoulders trembling. I don't know how you do it, she whispered. Jason gave a gentle smile. Because I've been there. I know how scary it feels when it's your kid. That night, Alexandra stayed after Sophie fell asleep. They talked until nearly 2 a.m. about childhoods, loss, dreams, and the loneliness that came with their responsibilities. Alexandra admitted that the CEO title people envied often felt like a cage. Jason shared how losing his wife left him terrified of opening his heart again. Spring came, and with it, a shift neither could ignore. They were no longer just two people linked by an emergency, they were part of each other's lives. Liam and Sophie became inseparable, laughing in the park while Jason and Alexandra talked on the bench. She admired his patience, his unwavering loyalty. He admired her strength, her sharp mind, and the way she was learning to slow down for the people who mattered. Then came Sophie's school play. Alexandra, buried under deadlines, almost missed it. She rushed into the auditorium just as Sophie was stepping on stage only to see Jason sitting in the front row, cheering her on like she was his own daughter. Alexandra slid into the